Hello, I'm Nathaniel Kelso, and today I'll be speaking about Natural Earth version 5 and recognizing multiple points of view. For those curious about other changes in V5, the second part of this presentation includes brief highlights. When I last spoke at NACIS, I presented these two slides showing how names were localized in version 4. This slide shows native names in native script. While this slide shows names all consistently in English, well, it turns out localization is more complicated than names only. The boundaries between countries are also important. The goal of Natural Earth remains to increase geographic literacy by making it easy to compile and publish maps from high-quality, free and open data. Natural Earth is used by people in every country around the globe. The project's authors have heard feedback that Natural Earth's de facto viewpoint doesn't work for every legal jurisdiction. Our North Star in this new version is our belief that the school teacher be able to teach geography based on Natural Earth without that teacher worrying about legal compliance issues. So without further ado, I introduce points of view for 31 alternate worldviews. It's important to note that Natural Earth's de facto boundaries remain in effect, pleasing no one, but at least it's self-consistent. Let's have a closer look at those boundary lines for countries, states, provinces, and populated places. Yes, we're only talking about less than 300 features, but for 31 worldviews, that's quite a bit of research over the last 3 years. With some trepidation, we're releasing version 5, knowing full well that it will both not please everyone and that it will have a few errors in it. So dear audience, gentle feedback is gladly welcomed and problems will be fixed in the next minor release. The point of view attributes are structured in the admin 0, admin 1, and populated place themes as new F-class columns per country. So F-class underscore AR for Argentina and so on based on ISO 2 postfixes to make it easier for web mapping. It's easier to see these countries on a map. More than half of the world's population is covered, and the list of countries roughly matches with the earlier name localization work, plus claimants to major disputed territories. For example, we added Ukraine in Ukrainian for Crimea. While the maps in this presentation are largely reference maps, some people use Natural Earth for choropleth maps. Additional country polygon variants are available in the same 31 worldviews, postfixed with the Natural Earth A3 code. To France and Norway with love, we now include 3 funky codes for ISO, ISO A2, ISO A3, and ISO N3, for those needing to join tabular data. Those are not an exact match, but the differences are probably not statistically significant / use at your own peril. As I mentioned before, V5 expands the name localization added in V4 series to 26 languages, up from 21, by adding Farsi for Iran, Hebrew for Israel, Ukrainian for Ukraine, Urdu for Pakistan, and distinguishes between the original simplified Chinese for China and new traditional Chinese for Taiwan. Localized names in the original 21 languages have also been updated. Natural Earth includes a fully featured demo QGIS project that loads most of the data and precompiles it into 9 zooms. Project properties easily allow adjusting the language of name labels and for point of view. Because not all labels are available for any given language, it's helpful to fall back to another common language spoken by that audience, which may or may not be English. Same thing for point of view. Which country does this audience most closely align with? Let's start with Kashmir and the expanse of Southeast Asia. Here we can see Pakistan's control of the Northern Territories, India's administrative split of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh east of Bhutan, Taiwan, and the South China Sea. Some of these Natural Earth dashes to emphasize the active dispute, and we show Taiwan as a separate country from China with its own national capital, and are largely silent about the maritime dispute in the South China Sea, which was adjudicated in 2016 by the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague. India's view of itself includes northern Pakistan, and it claims a definitive boundary for Arunachal Pradesh east of Bhutan. India, like most every country, views their own frontiers as inviolable, but other countries' frontiers can still be fluid. Pakistan's view of itself includes the Indian portions of Kashmir. but it doesn't take a side in India's dispute with Crimea in Arunachal Pradesh, east of Bhutan. China has a slightly different view of itself in Kashmir, though it shows the line of control between Pakistan and India as an everyday boundary. However, it claims most of Arunachal Pradesh, east of Bhutan, views Taiwan as a province, and shows an expansive 9-dash line in the South China Sea. Panning now to Crimea. Note how the breakaway area of Donbass has a dashed line, with a gray fill indicating Ukraine no longer controls the territory on the ground. And the two edge boundaries of Crimea are shown as disputed, while Crimea and Sevastopol are gray background as Russia administers those areas on the ground. Let's toggle V5 of Natural Earth's point of view and language properties for Ukraine. Note how the Donbass breakaway area is no longer shown, and the exterior Crimea boundary is shown as a country boundary with Crimea and Sevastopol claimed for Ukraine. Though not shown here, the landward Crimea boundary data is marked as an admin 1 line in this point of view. Now for Russia, note Donbass as unspoken and the landward Crimea boundary as a solid white country boundary line, ignoring any protests from Ukraine to the contrary. See also note Kosovo, and look over to Georgia for the two separatist regions which Russia views as fully fledged countries. Now for China, which, though not a claimant in this dispute, does have opinions. China views both the separatists in Donbass and the Russian annexation of Crimea unfavorably. Same goes for Kosovo, where they share the Russian view, and no Georgian separatists. Now for Germany, stand-in for EU countries. The exterior Crimea boundary is shown as a country boundary line, with Crimea and Sevastopol claim for Ukraine, though it can be red dashed to taste, and Kosovo returns. Now a preview of other changes in Natural Earth 5. As the world spins, Natural Earth catches up each version. This time it's Swaziland changing names to Eswatini on a lark, and Macedonia changing names to North Macedonia to make friends with Greece. In the 50 million theme only, Tuvalu was missing and has been added back. And from the last release, we had some cleanup in the data tables for Czechia as a country name in all the places. At the next admin level down, we have made some changes, including those shown here in South Africa for recent constitutional amendments, multiple splits and merges in India, including Telangana and in Kashmir, and including the Nubel region of Chile. However, the changes in admin 1 boundaries happen at a faster pace than this volunteer can track. Zooming out to 50 million, version 5 adds admin 1 features in China, India, Indonesia, Russia, and South Africa, joining Australia, Canada, Brazil, and the United States. Colored lines are shown, but polygons are also included. Zooming back to 1 to 10 million, a new admin 2 county layer has been added via an external contribution from MapDiva, makers of Ortelius cartography software for macOS. This is USA only, with lines shown here. Polygons and polygons without large lakes are also included. Natural Earth is slowly adding more hydro detail, and in this release, Tom Patterson has given Australia a special treatment. This joins the existing supplemental hydro in Europe and North America, starting at 1 to 10 million scale. Many apologies, Tom, for the long delay in publishing these and the North America changes. The default rivers and lakes were also adjusted. Speaking of North America, Tom has remastered the supplemental rivers and lakes for this rather large continent. Nearly every river and lake were redrawn and hundreds of names were adjusted. Let's zoom into Oklahoma and the Gulf Coast. The redrawn hydro is shown with colored strokes, with more river detail and less exaggerated reservoirs. The mainline rivers were also redrawn, but were excluded from the screenshot for clarity. The Aral Sea on the Kazakhstan border has split into many small seas, with a playa forming in the right long after the Amudarya outlet dried up. Lop Nur in China is now used as a nuclear testing range and has been moved to the historic lakes theme, with the existing playa filled in. Non-existent features be gone. The 2 Cabolibo reservoirs in Suriname have been removed from the 10 million lakes theme as they were never built. Speaking of fantasies, Natural Earth continues to not default in showing the bird to wheel trapezoid, but it is now available as an ingredient for those so inclined. Even the United States and Canada have complicated boundaries. Here we see the undisputed boundary between Maine and New Brunswick corrected to weave between Campobello and Deer Islands. Several disputed boundaries were added in Europe, South America, and Asia. Speaking of fixes in the US, the eastern shore of Virginia returns in V5 after fixing a tiny topological gap introduced in V4. This one is quite embarrassing, as I lived nearby in Washington, D.C. for many years. Welcome back, Lakes Tanganyika and Balkash, to the 50 million lakes theme. For unknown reasons, these and 134 other lakes went on a walkabout in V4. They have been restored in V5. I'm the first to admit that I am a terrible, like really terrible speller, and with tens of thousands of features, it's easy to lose track of a few. Here we can see the Great Salt Lake in the 110 million lakes theme being renamed from the erroneous lake Onega. Hundreds of changes were made to the populated places themes, mostly thanks to Facebook's use of the data for their new map. Huge thank you to Stephanie May and Elliot Bear for flagging problems and pitching in to edit the data. Others like Justin and Emery were also a huge help for flagging problems and recommending fixes. Here we can see two non-spelling changes, with the Windsor town spot moving into Canada and the feature class of Johannesburg changing to reflect its multi-capital status in South Africa. Today, I'll take questions via Slack. Thanks, and hope to see you in person soon.